Okay, I like this question that we got today. How do I know if someone's an A player or just talks well? So why listen to us? I'm Tom. This is Aaron. We have ran multiple agencies, uh, dealt with hundreds of employees. I don't know how many hundreds of clients. And these questions we usually get paid to answer. So enjoy. You want to take this one?
I know you want to start because you
Yeah,
have
I
a
wanna
lot of
start
thoughts
this
about
one?
this one.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
So, like, first of all, if you're at like a lower range in your income as a business, your revenue, like you can't get A players. You know, like this is just, it's a dream. It's like a dream sold in a book, by someone that's making a lot more money. But you can get like sort of A players. So I usually separate it by the types of questions they ask. So a B player is someone that's going to be really gung ho and be like, "I'm so happy to be on this team. I'm going to follow your process, and I want to learn." Which, you know, it sounds good initially when you're in like an owner, you know. But what you don't realize is like these B players, when things are not SOP'd, like something comes up, right? Depends what kind of business you do. Like in marketing, things will always come up. They're stuck. And now, instead of doing the work, it's like, "Hey boss, I'm ready to learn." So now you're doing the job and you're showing them, well, you're trying to explain to them how to do the job. But every time something similar happens, instead of figuring it out, because there's nuance, it's back to, "Hey boss, I'm ready to learn again." And you're back doing the work, right? So like an A player will not ask you to like, "Hey boss, tell me about the team and your process." They'll have like much smarter questions about, you know, how do you guys get to the outcome, and like want you to clear things up about, you know, how you deal with, like they just talk differently. And sometimes you got to fish it out too out of people, because they will say like they're A players, but they're not really. So when you start talking to them, and when the conversation's really about the past, the way they keep talking about it, like, "And this is what I did, and this is what," you know, like everything about the past, it's typically a B player. Like really, it's like that guy, you know, that the best thing he did in life was like catch a football in the last second in college, right? And then that story keeps going, you know, like over the next
It's
20 years.
American.
It is, yeah. But an A player will focus a lot more on the future, on like what's the next thing they can do that's bigger than anything they've done before. Like it changes a bit. Like they think differently. Like that's the way I approach it, what I've seen. But again, like I will say this. I know you've probably read all these books, like Buy Your Time Back and all these, but look, if your revenue is like at 20K as an agency, even 25, you're probably not going to get A players.
It's very hard.
Yeah. All right. Your take.
Yeah. I'll give you a couple of things. The first is A players almost all have a healthy dose of imposter syndrome. So they're constantly worried about, are they going to do a good enough job? And like Tom said, that'll reflect in the questions that they ask. Like when they interview, they're already thinking, how am I going to do this? And how am I going to succeed in this? Right? That's what's going on in their head. So that will reflect in how they answer interview questions. Right? They're more worried about not messing it up than demonstrating to you how good they were in the past.
Okay.
That's the first thing.
It's just one thing here, Aaron.
Yeah.
There's a split. 60% imposter syndrome, 40% light on the resume.
40%, you're going to have to explain that one, Tom.
Yeah. So when someone bullshits about what they've done, which happens a lot, they will also be kind of scared, how am I going to get this done at this company? And it will feel like imposter syndrome in a way, but it's not. They just never done it before. And they're looking for like ways to survive, right? So typically a person like that will come in and be like, who else is going to have my back and I can blame this on in case it doesn't go right?
Well, no. What I mean is like an A player who has imposter syndrome, they'll come in and they'll be like, here's how I would do it. Here are the things. And they're asking clarifying questions about usually technical details and in-depth stuff that someone who's BSing their way through the interview won't be able to. People who BS their way through interview typically talk about people.
Yeah.
And how good they are. They don't really talk about how the actual work is done because they can't actually do the work. It's like you get different, like you said, you get different words and different phrases out of them. during the
Yeah,
interview.
that's what I mean though. But as a owner that hasn't really seen both, like you can get tricked a
Okay.
bit by that
Yeah,
type of
be
thing.
a bit aware. Yeah. So along
Yeah.
those lines, the other thing I will say is if you have a good interview process, it will weed out a lot of B players very quickly. So that means you have to be clear on your end who you're hiring, job description, personality test matrix, that kind of thing. You should definitely do more than one interview with them. I would say at least two. And at least one of those should be a very in-depth interview into everything they've done in the past. Like go through their past jobs. You know, if you ask people the right questions, they will tell you all sorts of things about why you should not hire them. They will tell you why they got fired. They will tell you why they quit their job. They will tell you what their manager really thought about them. You just have to phrase it in the right way. And phrasing in the right way is actually kind of straightforward. You just literally ask, like, you know, if I asked your previous manager what he thought about you, what do you think he'd say? What would we say are your strengths and weaknesses? And people will honestly answer you in the middle of an interview. It's kind of interesting that people do that.
You know, I wouldn't have this thought in my head right now, like a year ago. But right now, when I'm listening to it, I'm like, okay, this is how you prompt people. This is how we explain this.
That's how you're prompting AI.
This
Same
is how
thing.
you prompt your hires properly.
Yeah. It's not that different, right? So,
No.
yeah, as long as you look, what most owners will do, they'll be like, they'll meet someone, they'll do, okay, come in for an interview, they'll sit and chat with them for 30 minutes, an hour maybe, if they really like them, and then they hire them. And that's like the worst way to hire people, right? You wanna have that quick chat, sure, over a coffee or whatever, fine. But then sit down and do a proper interview. Talk about strengths, talk about weaknesses, talk through every single position they had going back to college, right? You know, what did they do? How did they do it? What were the good things? What were the bad things? What did their manager think about them? What did their coworkers think about them? Can we call your manager to have a chat with them? And this cuts through a lot of the BS that people usually bring up in interviews, and B players will make themselves known very quickly simply by, oh, you can't speak with that manager, or, you know, he thought I wasn't putting enough of an effort in this particular task, right? And then you flag those things on your interview sheet, and then you don't hire B players.
I think you like called me out a little bit. No, because years back I had a project manager who was decent at managing, but didn't really understand the projects as much. I mean, this is like a common problem. And I had her interview people, and she would interview them based on how like she would like them, and they would come
God.
in, and I'll be like, "Hey, this person's useless." Like, you know, within the first hours, and then I would like, "Okay, but you like them, right?"
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do that. I've made some, not really mistakes, but I wasted some time. Let's put it that way.
So high level, what Tom said, look at the questions they ask, look at what they say, and have a proper interview process. And that's pretty much how you determine if someone's an A player or just talks really well.
Yeah. Good talkers know how to get through the interviews. Like, just remember that when someone's like, and I've seen this, some really, really talented, I would still say B players, but really talented, they can't talk very well, and they will be out-talked by someone that's like a C player, like masquerading as a B player. A players usually will ask good questions. They might not do it like in a friendly way. It might be like an Elon type way, but they will ask good questions. But it's like the C and B players. This is where it really, really comes in. All right. Until next time.